but I will make this happen. Okay, so welcome everybody. It is January 10th, 2025. This is our first kind of real Perfect Connections meeting for 2025. So it's exciting. Um, let's go around and introduce ourselves for the home audience. Hi everybody who's watching on the video. I'm Susan Walker, formerly somewhat still in thought with the University of Minnesota, and now kind of just a continued consultant and traveler and advocate for good parenting education around the world. And I will call on Nancy Trahey.
Hello, I'm Nancy Trahey from Albany Area Schools. I am a parent educator for ECFE, and I do some home visits as well with families at birth to five. And I am retired full time. I This is my gig is just really about 1 day a week, sometimes 2 days a week, parts of the year. And I will pass it on to Jennifer.
Hello, I am Jennifer Wenner. I'm a parent educator in the Minnetonka District. And I will pass it to Sandy.
Hi, I'm Sandy Salter. I am a parent and family educator in the Fairmont Area School District. I also do home visiting and outreach and publicity for our program. I will turn it over to Abby.
Hi guys, I'm excited to come. I normally am done working on Fridays earlier than this, so I was like, I can go today. So yeah, I teach in Wilmer, and I'm a parent educator here. And then I am doing some assistant coordinating this year, which has been a shift in my role, so I'm kind of doing half and half of each. So yeah, and I'll go to Carissa.
Carissa Waite, parent educator in Mounds View, and also do a little bit of outreach and things like that. Ellen, I think you're left.
Ellen Hafner, parent educator in Northfield, and I'm just cleaning up my disaster of a desk. It was our first week. And as you know, the first week is always wow. So I'm in that, I made it, but it's chaos.
Do other districts do a semester break? We're back for 2 weeks and then we're off for another week again, which is a little much all at the same time. Although I think last year we had 2 weeks off. We had 2 weeks off for Christmas. We were back for 2 weeks and had 2 weeks off for semester break. And then we have a run until pretty much until spring break. But it's kind of a lot for families too.
It's confusing for them with classes, like starting and then stopping
And then I send messages, hey, remember everybody, we don't have class because we don't have school Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday in 2 weeks. But then to keep the fee structure for all the classes the same, we just don't have class at all because otherwise then it's fee scales and it's just a mess.
Yep.
But then I send messages over and over and they're like, oh, they show up. I'm like, oh my gosh. It's so hard.
And the other thing is, I don't know about your programs, but I think we've talked about this before. Separation is a big, learning how to separate well is a big goal for families, and that really messes with that.
We have a little guy today in a 2-year-old class that's really been struggling, and mom has not been separating. And so the first week back after break, they're like, okay, we're not going to separate. And then we're like, well, what do we do? Does she separate next week? Because then we're going to be gone. And then it feels like she never will get to separating if we keep not separating because we just had a break. So we decided it went well today, and she is going to try it next week. So, but we'll see.
Yeah, I was going to ask what you're sort of coming back to the new year. My only real experience with it is I know with St. Paul, it seems like they're in two blocks, and the second block begins at the end of January, and then they're gone, but then they come back for a few weeks, and I don't yeah, so I was curious what the start of the year was. Well, it's been a while, so I also forgot to invite you all to share if there's anything you'd like to talk about today or ask each other. So I'll just put it out there. I'll have the chat window open and you can share. I can tell you a little bit if you're interested. I don't if like if you want to do thumbs down, like it's okay, Susan, you have to talk about it. But I was in Hong Kong at the it was the Asian Family Summit 2024 and gave a keynote on technology and the family. Um, but anyway, so what would you guys like to talk about today?
I've just got a quick one. I have a dad who just doesn't stop. He doesn't stop talking, but it's not for like fear. It's not for like domination. He's just a really slow processor, and he goes on and on and on, and he doesn't really say anything at all. He moved up from the toddler room to the preschool room, and he does a lot of and yeah I just and he went on for so long for our introductions, and people were starting to squirm, and I just, how do you break in? I want him to be able to share, but also like he needed to be stopped. So how do you, again, he's not dominating, he's just super slow at processing. And he was very nervous. He was very nervous. It was a new group for him, and I think when he's nervous, he has processes even slower. I don't know. Do you just have to let him run?
I mean, give him, enough time to feel like
Mhm.
he's, especially if he's nervous, that he's not getting cut off, but he might actually appreciate you stepping in and helping him
How do you do that
stop and shift.
gently? Like, do you be like, what
You
I hear
know,
you say is like, I just,
yeah. I find it, we all kind of look for that, like, take a breath moment where you can be
Mhm.
like, "Point." And sometimes they don't have that, they don't give you that. But I think so sometimes, I mean, you're such a kind, welcoming presence in person that it won't, I don't think it'll ever come across as rude. And so,
just, yeah, it always just
sooner than
feels so
later,
rude, but I think
jumping
the
in
group
and like
appreciates
helping
it
him,
too.
it might
Yeah,
help him to wrap up
that's
what he's
true.
feeling
It
nervous
might,
about.
because he doesn't quite seem to know how to finish
Yeah.
the
Right.
conversation.
Oh,
Yeah,
and so
that's a
like you
really good
said that,
point.
like, so what I hear you saying, or like, that kind of thing
Hmm. Hmm.
might actually be helpful for him and
Okay.
certainly helpful for the rest of the
I
group
never
too.
I never thought
I
about
know
that.
it's
I never
hard.
thought about how he
Yeah.
might be like, oh God, how do I stop? How do I wrap up my all? And it's all over. It's just all over the place, all over the map. So he really might not know how to.
Yeah. This isn't totally kind of on point with your question, but I introduced this week based on this group, like passing around. I have big pom poms, green for, here's a good
Mhm.
thing, red for a bad thing, yellow for a
Mhm.
random thing. And I introduced them kind of as a way of sort of showing what Joys and Concerns was all about in the fall, in the beginning of the year. Gone fine. We've kind of tapered off of them, but a total unexpected benefit of them was, at first I was actually having everybody, hand them around and they could pass. But an unexpected benefit was like handing off those pom poms is just this nice signal to I'm done. And a signal to me that like we don't, this person is saying like I've had enough, I've said enough, and we can move on. I don't know if this dad would do that, but
Yeah,
just that's something that came into my mind
something
that was
physical.
a nice,
Yeah, he tends
clear
to.
marker. I don't want to talk
Yeah,
about this
that's a
anymore.
really good idea. I should maybe think about that for
Yeah,
this
it
one.
is because it's concrete,
Yeah,
and that
Yeah.
might
yeah,
help a slow processing person, even if it's like a red dry erase marker and a green
Hmm.
dry erase
yeah,
marker or whatever.
Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
Someone had said bean bags, and I couldn't find them, so I found whatever I could find in red,
yeah,
green, and
yeah.
Well, and the
anyway.
problem is like you guys, I did the lock screen, like share what's on your lock screen. I think that came up at the summer retreat. And I said, what's on your lock screen? And he doesn't have a smartphone. And then it went into this whole long story about why he doesn't have a smartphone. You know what I mean? So sometimes I think even if there's a question, like I might try it and just see, but also he just tends to be this person who just goes. But I love the idea of a
And
concrete
so
thing. Yeah,
the pom-poms or beanbags might actually backfire because he'll
they
never
really.
give them over.
Yeah, I know.
So
And make sure he's last. Luckily he sat at the very, I did not start
there
with
you
him.
go.
I ended with him
Yeah.
so that he didn't
Yeah.
set the standard for the rest of the sharing. So,
Good thinking.
okay, I like it.
Oh,
Red, green, yellow.
whoops. There we go. I was a part of a training program where the strategy is called reflective listening, and you use it with children, but it also is helpful with adults, I think. And that's what you're talking about. Just even saying, because to us, it feels like what I hear you saying sounds like formulaic, you know what I mean? And so just saying you're, you're, whatever you're frustrated about not having a cell phone. That is hard. I'm sure many of us can relate to that. And, finding a way like that to help him
Mhm.
stop.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then don't give him a chance to start it, right? To the shift immediately to.
So I'm curious how the other parents respond when he's talking a lot. Like, do they drift off? Are they just like
It was definitely getting uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It was definitely getting uncomfortable. A couple over here started like whispering, so I didn't want it to get awkward. I mean, I could just tell people were kind of, shifting in their chairs, and because I wanted him to feel like he had some agency in this new room. He knew one other person. It's a lovely group. They're really nice people, but also I think they were just like, okay, we want to get going, because I had said we're going to do introductions and then we'll get to questions, because I know, or check-ins, because I know you guys haven't seen each other in a month, and I'm sure you have exciting things to share and questions to ask. So I think they were like, okay, and we had 10 minutes left, so they're like, TikTok, you're eating into our time. And it's just hard, I think, too, when everybody follows what I ask them to do, and then you've got that one rogue that just, and everyone's like, oh God, here's this guy, so. But I wasn't looking at everybody, I was looking at him, but just sensing that everybody around was getting a little frustrated. You know how you just sort of sense that in the group? Kind of my spidey sense was like, oh boy, here, I'm losing him. I'm losing him. So thanks, guys. That's some good feedback.
Yeah. It's
Thank
a
you. We
tricky
can,
thing though. It really is, because unfortunately other people's responses then that can just sort of heighten his own nervousness. And, and the kind of I was going to ask too, like if you gave him the prompt ahead of time, but if he's the end, he has time to think about it, somewhere in, like the people that I know who are slow processors, the therapists or whoever that they work with will oftentimes will try to help them slow down and think about their response first, right? And then sort of compose that response. But clearly this guy, even though he's got plenty of time, kind of is not doing that. And that probably is a lot of nerves. So I agree. I think having something tactile, having an activity, something that but also that redirection, as Jennifer was saying, I do think that that can be helpful. It's also a cue to like that to him, right? Maybe gives him
he's neurodiverse himself. So I think that has a lot to do with it too,
Yep.
So yeah, no, it's a really good point. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Ellen.
Yeah. Thanks, friends.
Others? Other things you'd like to ask the group?
I am curious with you veteran ladies. I have a really chatty first group on Monday mornings, and I love it because they know each other so well. They've been coming for the last 3 times or the last 3 years since I've started, and but it's just like so hard to even do a topic because they're so chatty. And I'm struggling with like, is that okay? Because this is what they want and need. or do I need to rein it in a little bit more? They also, can you guys hear me? My thing keeps, okay.
Yep.
I also have a student teacher starting next week. And so I'm like, I want it to be meaningful for her. And so I don't know, any suggestions or right or wrongs?
I'll share something I heard from Ellen once was some weeks, when you have a group like that, that some weeks can be like their week, and a little more kind of go with the flow and let them talk. And some weeks you kind of claim as your week of like, I've got something I really want to dive in to today. And I think, and so we're just going to dive right in. And that way you can have, because yeah, I mean, it's really good to know where your group is and what they are really thriving on, but it's also part of our responsibility to just
And I think it's
structure that.
some of the moms, it is like their social thing that they do each week. But then I think some of the parents or, moms or dads or whoever it may be, like they're coming because they truly do want to learn something. And so I want to make it meaningful for both groups. But yeah,
Well,
the
that's the other
balance.
thing. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead,
ahead.
Ellen.
Oh, just kind of backing up, kind of piggybacking on Jennifer. I like to say things like, I love the energy in here. I love how, we have great conversations, so acknowledging the relationships and the connections that they have. And then and also I have something today that I really want to share with
Yeah.
you. So if we could just buckle down and focus on that, I'd appreciate it. I kind of pull out the high school
Yep.
teacher voice,
Yep.
as too, but I like to acknowledge, like, I love how you guys are so chatty.
Mm-hmm.
And
let's move on.
let's move on. Yep.
Okay. Thank you. That's helpful.
Well, and then today I did it. I have 3 moms in my Friday group who have known each other since high school, and they're really irritating. And today I was like, do I have to separate you 3? And they're like, sorry. So, but I have a relationship with them. I've known them forever, but I was able to like use some joking. You can't do that with every group, but as soon as I scolded them a little bit in a fun way, they're like, it was really funny.
Yeah. Okay, that's
I was just going to say too,
I
sometimes
feel
you
like
might have to do that for 2 or 3 weeks even to like, if you've kind of got a little bit of a pattern going to
Yep.
establish that sometimes we're going to do what I want to do and then go back to letting them have a week.
Yeah.
I have a group that's kind of like that this year, and they're pretty good at the beginning. They'll let me get my topic going. But then all of a sudden we're talking about nap time. Like in the middle of the topic, we've veered left, and I tend to lose them. And I've been struggling to then get them back, and sort of similar where a lot of them were together before and know each other well, but I've got 1 or 2 that are brand new even to the ECFE at all. And I can kind of see them starting to disengage a little bit sometimes when I can't get them back to, so I don't want that happening either. So it is tricky.
Yeah. And that's a good point too, because there are some new families starting now this session, and I don't want to make them feel like outsiders when the rest of the group knows each other so well. So yeah.
This week on Tuesday, I have a not separating toddler class. So, I have very limited time for parenting, like 15 minutes usually, and because it's only an hour class. So this week we were just coming back, and I was like, I only have this short amount of time, and I really just, for some reason, my brain was like, I don't know if it was just that we've been on break and I felt like I really needed to do what I'd planned to do or whatever. But I said something like, I'm just going to switch things up a bit today, and we're going to save celebrations and concerns for the end of class. First we're going to go over this. And you know what? At the end, I said, oh, gosh, we're out of time. And sorry we didn't get celebration and concerns. I'll make sure we do that first next time. But one mom even said, well, this was my concern, so thanks.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's just another way to phrase it too, if you want to just blame it on yourself. Like, oh, just trying to switch things up today.
Yeah. I've thought about that too, like saving highs and lows for the end and then getting to it if it works. especially for that group. Thank you guys, that was helpful.
Anyone else?
If no one has anything, I don't know if I have a
Oh, Krista, you just went mute. Yep. Okay.
sorry. I have a mom earlier this week. She's in the National Guard and I don't really know exactly how all that works, but she was like considering a deployment. Apparently she has some choice in the matter and it would help her get a promotion she wants if she does it. And she said her and her husband talked to their couples counselor about it. And their couples counselor basically told her that if she did, her relationship with her children was over and it would never come back again. And I was like, I can't agree with that. Like it would just be this horrible trauma for the children. They would never recover. When she comes back, she would never have the same relationship with them again. And she's got 3. The youngest is in class, so he's not quite 2. And then 2 girls that are older. I can't quite remember, like very early elementary. And I mean, families do it. We know that's just not true. But I was having I don't know, I was having a hard time sort of like being specific about it in the moment, I guess, about like why I didn't think that was true. And I mean, part of it was, of course, you're going to support your children through this. You're not disappearing and you're not. And dad and grandma and whoever else is home when she's gone will support the kids through it. And I don't know. Does anyone have any? She wasn't even necessarily looking for information or anything either. I think after that conversation, I don't think anything was going to convince. She was like, "Oh, so I'm not. I won't do it. I'm done. I'm out." And I don't think she was necessarily looking for reasons to be able to go or anything, but I don't know if anyone had any maybe resources.
Year Out of 3 has a lot of stuff
Birth to
to
3
support
does.
military families. It's got some really good stuff. You could see my face was all going because I have military family. And so I'm, if this mom wants to or doesn't want to, that should be her own, her own choice. But to feel kind of scared or shamed into making that choice, it's not, definitely, it's a hard thing for a family, but I'm really taken aback by that blanket, you're gonna, wreck your relationship kind of verbiage is really troubling. And so you might, even if she's made her choice and she's done, you might share some of that more quality research and info because presumably she's got friends and colleagues who are in that situation. And I would love for more helpful, accurate, supportive information to be shared.
That's a good point. Yeah. Or even we talked a little bit about like, maybe you feel like now is not the right time, but if it's an option in 3 years or 4 years when the kids are a little bit older or whatever. So maybe it would be helpful if she does in a few years or something want to reconsider.
Carissa, could you just, Ellen was just asking just rephrasing your initial question?
I had a mom earlier this week who was in the National Guard and was considering a deployment because it would help her get a promotion that she was hoping for. And her and her husband talked to their couples therapist about it. And that therapist essentially said that if she did, her relationship with her children would be destroyed, and over, and it would never come back again. And this would be a huge trauma for the children and they would never recover. And
find a new therapist who supports military families. My God.
I didn't say that, but I was like, I don't know if you should be seeing her.
No. How awful. I did have a mom.
She felt really bad. And she was like, so obviously I'm not going to do it. And
no. Oh God. Okay. Well, I had a mom a couple of years ago who deferred. She's Air Force. And she had deferred her deployment for a while. And she finally did, it was 3 months. So, she did a share with somebody. But she was in Djibouti And so she went to Djibouti for 3 months, and I had the family while she was gone. And dad kept coming, and it was so cool because she would send videos. They did video chats all the time. They did Marco Polo all day long. The kids would want to do Marco Polo in the classroom. And so they would be like, we're in school. And they wanted to show her what the activities were. And then she sent pictures to all of us of like, here's my planes and here's my base. And it was so cool. And the parents in my group did a little send off and like, thank you for serving our, it was really, really neat. So if she's not going to do it, just for anybody else who has a family member
Yes.
who is going to deploy, they're fine. Like, that's what
It's
video
not
chats are for.
easy,
It's not
but they're
easy, but you can
fine.
do
Not
it.
easy, but it's
And
totally
it doesn't
doable. And
destroy your
really the
relationship.
age,
Yeah.
sometimes you think, oh, wait until you're older, your kids are older. That in some ways can be easier, in some ways that can be harder.
Correct. Because when
Sure.
they're little, they don't have a sense of time.
Yeah. I mean, none of
Yeah.
it's easy, but none of it's a deal breaker. And,
Right.
it might be that this promotion is really going to matter for the longevity of this family.
Yeah.
Right.
Ugh.
Not
What a
longevity, but you
horrible
know what I mean?
situation
Of
for
like,
them.
yeah. Yeah. Sounds like this therapist is perhaps not the right fit for this family. Yeah.
2 thumbs down.
Thank you.
Yeah, and even if she wasn't that blunt about it, just the fact that the mom left feeling that that was what was implied, because you never really know, right? I mean, what goes on in a conversation.
Sure.
But what she carried out of that was that if she goes, she's going to destroy the relationship with her kids, right? And so again, I call, I mean, that is certainly not good therapy to not understand this individual well enough to know how she's going to interpret stuff, right? It should be to be supporting her decisions one way or the other so she feels good about the decision, right? And I'm with Jennifer. I mean, I just, like the economic welfare. So I think that's the other thing is sometimes people get siloed, right? And they're thinking about sort of more of the big R relationship stuff, but they're also not thinking about the economic well-being of a family and how in the long run, right, that could also be beneficial. So yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate that she left that session feeling like the one alternative that was already bringing her a sense of guilt and challenge, like this professional was sort of telling her that it would be that bad, right? So yeah.
And I think she left, unfortunately, feeling, and I think you said shame, Jennifer, like, how dare she even consider it?
Exactly.
Like, she was a bad mom for even thinking about it. Like,
Yeah. And
which,
I'm going to call the feminist card here, and I really wonder if that was a dad, if the therapist would have said the same thing.
mhm. Yeah,
I mean, let's just not pile on anymore on moms who are making tough decisions.
Yeah.
for sure.
We have a
I'm
family.
sorry.
I'm sorry. We have a family in our district with 4 children, and they are in our early childhood program. I think they only came to ECFE with the first one because they're both in the military, and they both have had deployments, and they've been fortunate in that they've been able to not both be gone at the same time. They've been able to hop scotch each other, and it there's so many families that have successfully done this. I think there's so much available to support them. And I'm glad to know that the Birth to Three website has some supports on it, Jennifer. I really appreciate that. That was a new resource for me that I didn't know about. I was writing notes down here. Not that this family needs it, but we have other families who have deployed family members, and so that might be a good resource for them. I don't know. I bet the military has good resources too, which I'm sorry this mom didn't hook up with some of that.
Yeah, we
And to
didn't
your
really
point
talk
about
about
there's-
that. So I'm not sure if anything was ever offered or she had asked there. I'm not really sure about that, but you would think so.
To Nancy's point about there's so many ways of doing it successfully. I've got a family who, again, mom and dad are both in the military, and they decided to have their deployments at the same time so that the kids were able to go to, grandma and grandpa. And, it was just grandma and grandpa for 9 months or the 12 months or whatever it was. And then the whole family came back together. And that was what made a lot of sense for that family.
You know, and in the last, I'll say 10, but it's probably longer than that now. There has been so much money put in from the Department of Defense on military families, from childcare and training and resources and research. I mean, there are whole military family centers that are set up like at Purdue and other places like that. And part of that, and they're doing it at Minnesota as well, are a lot of, sort of educational resources, for military families as well. And so, there is so much out there in support of military families and in making these deployment decisions. And especially now, like with, I loved all of Jennifer's, examples, especially with the internet. I mean, I used to, in my classes, I would show my students, a little video of a military family where the one parent was deployed, and they were, touching base with the kids, and they were talking about homework and, stuff like that. And then I would have the students sort of troubleshoot, like, what are the benefits of what are the benefits for the things that we know are positive for families in terms of connectivity and cohesion and things like that, that kind of interaction could, there are also some negatives, right, on the person who is deployed and sort of their own, sort of emotional pull when they can't be with their family, right? That having it more live rather than like a letter. But there's so many ways, and especially through cell phones and texting and WhatsApp and things like that, that parents can be probably as involved in a lot of ways as they could be on a day-to-day. I mean, because if we parallel that with commuter parents, parents who work in another city, parents who travel a lot, I mean, take the military piece out of it. And I don't mean to diminish, the stress and challenges of life in the military. But if we just think about a family that needs to be separated for a significant period of time, then this therapist is going to say, oh, don't take that job, don't take that promotion in that other city for 9 months, or that, are they going to say that? Like, that's just silly. So yeah, anyway, I just think that there's so much that's been done in the last 10 to 20 years on military families that, we should be supporting, and their creative ways. So, yeah. Oh, there it is. Thank you, Jennifer, for sharing that. Yeah. Yeah. Good. Anybody else? Great questions, guys. I'll share a little bit about Hong Kong. So the conference was the Asian Family Summit 2024, and there is I'll put in the webs or it was AFS. Let me do this because if you're interested, afs2024.org. Yeah, there it is. So in that you can see all the various, or the one impressive thing were all the different sponsors of this group. One really interesting thing that I learned about Hong Kong is there's something called the Jockey Club. And so all over, I would see like this family, Jockey Club, Family Link, Jockey Club, whatever, after school program. And so at one of the dinners, this guy who I'm not sure what his title is, but I think he's pretty high up there, mucky muck or whatever in Hong Kong government stuff. And he was explaining to me that the Jockey Club is legal betting, and it's like that, like the betting, the money that they take in from betting on horses and other things that people gamble on, produces 7% of Hong Kong's revenue. 7%, like that's big. And so the Jockey Club is like a huge supporter of all these different family agencies in Hong Kong. So it's just like, turning in, because the whole thing was they know people are going to bet anyway. And so rather than having it be sort of black market kind of stuff, they'll just make it out in the open. And this is where you go to bet. And so this is where those revenues go. So anyway, that was pretty interesting. And the other interesting thing was one day at the conference. So this is what always gets me about sort of family conferences and children conferences is that they're all for professionals. Like imagine Menafee and how like the third day would be we would bring in little kids, and like that there would be some sort of, event in the conference in the big hall where the different booths are and stuff. Only like families would come in, right? And they would take advantage. So they had this expo as part of this thing of the 3 days where there were all these different agencies and the place was just packed and people were like playing games and there's sort of like these exercise videos. And so there were a lot of people who were like jumping and they could see themselves on screens and they were like playing with robots and stuff. And so I thought that was pretty cool. So yeah, so it was the way I got involved with this is through my occasional consulting with United Nations. The United Nations in the Division of Economic and Social Affairs identified 4 megatrends facing families, right? And so technology is one of them. And for whatever reason, like I got tapped as their expert person on that. And the reason I think I did is because in the big world of academia, more of a generalist. And so, and also because of my practical experience and my policy experience, and this is what I was saying to Sandy in my notes is, so I'll talk about research, practice, and policy. And usually, as Jennifer knows, people get pretty narrow into the depth of research that they do in a particular topic. So mine is more general, and that's what the UN needs. They need somebody to kind of talk across. And I like it because it always gives me that opportunity. Like at the end of my talk, I was going, and we can do this, and we can do this, and we can do this. And that's great, right? And then I paused and I said, not enough. We also need to be supporting practitioners. So like always get on my high horse about supporting practitioners, which always then gives me an opportunity to wedge in ECFE. And because at the end of it, I was talking about professional development and supporting practitioners in this topic specifically about technological change facing families. And and what I usually do with that is then talk about standards, because the way I see it, and this is what I saw at the university, is if, whatever those licensure standards are, right, then that filters into what the curriculum is that licensed teachers are trained on, right? Which then means that's the qualifications that school districts look for when they hire those teachers. So if you want to introduce technology training or any kind of training, training on diverse families or culture and families or anything like that, you put it in the standards, because then the places of higher education and places like Menafee and others who are doing professional development, they're going to look at those standards as guidance to what do our professionals need to know. Right. If it comes from a single group or a single individual going, you should have more on special needs kids. Honestly, maybe if you have money behind you, someone's going to listen to you. But generally, I found that it sort of starts at the top with standards. And so that's kind of my thing is, like at a policy level, we need to be introducing that in our standards and then look at that our training, and our preparation of professionals and then their professional development. But then at the end, I said, but I also know that for a lot of you who are on the ground practitioners talking about standards, talking about, academic preparation, like that's not your job. That's not what you do, right? And so here's my advice. This is the best thing that you can do to support, to sort of develop your own comfort and confidence around technology. And yes, I used the data I collected during COVID with you all. So I love having that, right? And, and I said, talk to each other. And I have a slide where I have a picture of us from our Zoom meeting, and I said, I just opened up this Zoom thing for people to talk about during COVID. And they could, just sort of share like their challenges with integrating technology into their practice. And it's been a really good thing. And you can do that too. Like just talk to each other. What a concept. Who would think of that, right? So I like doing that because I always get a chance to bring it down to practitioners. And I can't tell you how many, there were 700 people, I guess, registered for this thing. And the like half the people were social workers. So in Hong Kong and the Asian countries, I'm sure that there are, like one person said to me, that sounds great in the US. We don't have what we call family professionals. So they have a lot of professionals who work with families, but I don't think family is necessarily part of their title. And anyway, so a lot of social workers and physicians. And and after my talk, I had a number of people who were both social workers, but also um, pediatricians and child psychologists and people who were practitioners like that who were coming up and thanking me, like just thanking me that they were recognized, right? Oh my gosh, like that was worth the 20 hours of travel right there. So, um, but the interesting, and anyway, and then so I'll just throw in the one, oh, and the other thing I have to say is you know how you have like your identity every day and like who you are and all of that. Well, when I was in Hong Kong, like like that wasn't Susan Walker from St. Paul, Minnesota. That was like Princess Diana. I mean, they treated me like a queen. And this is so different. It was like being on a paid vacation in a way, right? I mean, but it wasn't, not at all. That 16-hour flight from LA to Hong Kong is brutal. It's just brutal. Anyway, but the reward was I got off the flight and somebody's meeting me like with my name, Professor Susan Walker, like right there at the end of the walkway. And this person in a suit, like he escorts me through everything, escorts me through immigration with the passport stuff. And he was so cute. He was so friendly. And he said, "Do you mind if I ask you if you're over 65?" And the reason he was asking was because there's a special line. Like if you're a geezer or you're a diplomat, like there's a special passport line, right? So he did that, and then he got my bag, and then he takes me to the front door, and then waiting for me at the front door is a really clean van with just me and this driver who was like professionally, like, oh my God. So he drove me then to the university, but the thing was that the opening session was at 9 a.m. and my flight got in at 7 a.m. and they needed me there. And I'm wearing, so I flew on Christmas Day, which meant that I got in their time on the 27th. So I'm wearing my red Christmas sweatshirt that has like a pug and a sloth and kittens and jingle bells and everything. And but they were very nice. Somebody and the coordinator like she had they don't drink coffee out of cups. I mean, they do, but I think they're big on little to go like metal bottles. So she had a thing of coffee for me. And I'll I don't know. I think I can put the link to it. But anyway, the opening ceremony was the whole like dragon dance thing, if you've seen it done, where there's like um people who are acrobat, they like, so each dragon had three kids, and this is a huge thing in their high school. Like this is like a high school after school activity. And so the kids were out in the lobby and I could see them sort of in a t-shirt and then the brightly colored like pink or purple um pants that they were wearing with the costume. Anyway, these people know how to open a conference. Oh my gosh, SRCD or Manafi or AP, they would be lucky to open a conference like this. It was so much pomp and circumstance. And so they do the thing with these acrobatic dragons, And there's a drum group over on the side that is like doing drums and cymbals and everything. And anyway, but they were all very proud to share with me that these were all high school students who were doing this, and that this was quite an honor, for them to do this. They were great, and the coordination, right, that they have to do, plus whoever is the head has to do the mouth, and they have to flap the big eye lashes and everything. Anyway, so that was super cool. And then, yeah, and then at the conference, they just like I sat at the VIP table, and because I'm a vegetarian, like this really long menu. It wasn't like my husband said, "Oh, what did you order?" And I said, "No, that's the whole thing. Like they just keep bringing out courses. There's more and more and more food." So, but because I was a vegetarian, like the conference chair just popped up when she saw I wasn't eating this big piece of fish. And she goes, "Oh, you're a vegetarian." And the next thing I knew, like all the courses came out like without meat. So yeah, so they treated me great. But the one thing that happened when I was doing the keynote, they also have, so the one thing about Hong Kong is they have a whole lot of people in a very small space, right? It's the most highly densely populated place, I think, in the world. And so 7 million people. So lots of high rises and things like that. It's pretty intimidating. Um, and and so what that also means is there's like three deep of people who are doing like one person's job. And so there were always people there for coordination and to go from one place to the next and timing and, things like that. And I had seen this efficiency and I was really impressed by it until it came to my keynote. And this was the third day, and already people are kind of, petering out, which was fine. And my thing was at 10:15, and I'm sitting there, and at 10:15, the session before just keeps going. And I lean over to the Pat, who's like the head honcho, and I just said, was my session supposed to start now? And she goes, "Well, the other session's running long, so we're going to wait because we want those people from the other session to have a chance to come in and hear your talk." Well, long story short, it started late and they didn't give me all the time. And for once in my life, like it won't surprise you that I usually run overtime. So this time, and so the document, by Jennifer. And so the document that I posted is the transcript of what I said because I wrote it all down for once in my life. I actually wrote it down and practiced it. So I had the timing down. But at 45 minutes, they cut me off. And they were very polite about it, but they said, but the whole reason was because they had this big expo with families coming and things like that. And so like professionally, like how do you handle stuff like that, and this is the other thing, Sandy, like if you see the video, it's better to just read the transcript or look at the slides because I didn't finish. And so we sort of brought it to some completion, and I said, "You'll have the slides, you can see the rest of it." And but then there was a session in the afternoon related to technology, so they gave me like 10 minutes there. So and so I finished it there. And I have to say, I was a pro. It was great because I opened it up by, just saying, first of all, I addressed the three people who were there to talk and said to them, I promise you I'm not going to take more than 5 minutes because I know you have prepared your talks and I want to give you the time. And I'll just join your Q&A. Like we don't need a special Q&A for me. And but I opened it up and I said, "I know most of you were here for the keynote, so we'll just pick up where we left off." And I had two like summary slides of like recommendations. And I said, "In my country, we have the saying, when life hands you lemons, you make lemonade." And they love that. They love so No, it was great. It was great. So all in all, it was a really interesting trip, and it was nice once in my life, to be treated weird and nice and all of that. Absolutely wonderful people, just wonderful, wonderful, wonderful people. And I would work with them again in a heartbeat. So, all right, that's it. It's 1 o'clock. I'm not going to keep talking at you, but anyway, so just a little bit there. And you're welcome. And so you have the transcript, but check out just the enormity of this thing, of all the different agencies. And I will say too, I'm incredibly impressed by the number of agencies that are out there in Singapore and in China and South Korea and the Philippines and in Hong Kong and all of these other countries that are supporting families. So, yep. So with that, thank you all. And I'm so excited that we're back. We're back for 2025. So thanks everybody. Have a great week. We'll see you next week.
Thank you. Good to see you all.